This video is presented by mybookie.ag. What's up guys, here are my predictions for UFC Fight Island 6. Brian Ortega versus Korean Zombie this Saturday. The card is going to start 3 hours before usual, and this card is really nice, man. Really good prospects all over the card, a lot of good records, nothing really salty going on here. Said Nurmagomedov is fighting Mark Striegel, amazing fight starting off the entire card. Claudio Silva versus James Krause is going to be a very interesting fight. Silva's been pretty inactive throughout his entire UFC career, and James Krause is undefeated at the welterweight division, and he performs very well on short notice. He's taking the fight on like 2 weeks short notice. Jimmy Crute versus Modestas Bukauskas is going to be a powerful fight. Not the fastest guys, not the most technical, but head-on collision is going to be pretty explosive. But the fight I want to start with, in my opinion, the best fight on the card besides the main event, and I'm glad they're putting it as the headliner of the prelims, even though they're both making their UFC debut. Mateusz Gamrat versus Guram Kutateladze. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. I'm so sorry. But yes, these two are making their UFC debuts and they're headlining the prelims of a very anticipated card. Tells you a lot what the UFC thinks about these two guys. Gamrat made a huge name in KSW where he was the international KSW champion, defending his belt and all that stuff, one of the best organizations in Europe, and also defeated Norman Park on a few occasions. And Guram is actually Hamza Shemahiev's training partner, probably why they're putting him up this high on the card already, and he is an absolute powerhouse, man. Phenomenal Muay Thai striker. Haven't seen too much of his grappling skills, haven't seen too much of his wrestling skills, but his striking is absolutely high level, man. He will counter you with a head kick moving backwards. That's how confident he is in his ability to strike on the feet with anybody. That power also translates right into his punches. His hand speed is pretty shocking. His precision when he's moving back is absolutely amazing, man. It's stunning to watch. But where he does fall off is his aggressive striking. When people are moving around on him, he tends not to be able to track them that well. He's so used to that Muay Thai style of a fight where they're kind of standing in front of each other. He loves the fight to be in the center of the cage or if he's backing up, but when he has to chase you down or he's trying to cut you off from the cage, he seems very uncomfortable. Like super uncomfortable to the point where he's throwing punches like 5 feet away from the opponent and they're completely missing. And he does not throw many feints to set up much. When you look at him fight, his style revolves around him getting you to chase him, he counter strikes you and knocks you out. Now, Gamrat is a lot more well-rounded. He's very good on the ground, very good wrestler. He switches stances well. He feints all over the place. He has some of the best feints already in the UFC, I believe. The kind of feints he throws in KSW are things you don't even see in the UFC yet. He'll fake low on you with a jab and come up with an uppercut. He'll fake like he'll throw a kick and he's entering on you with a long left hook. He's tapping your rear hand with his power hand, getting you to overextend on him, and he backs up with a left hook on you, checks you with it. There's so many setups to Gamrat's game. I think that's enough for him to defeat someone like Guram, to be honest. And also, given the fact that he's a superior wrestler, he's better on the defense than Guram is on the offense. I will say the strongest asset from both these fighters is Guram on the defense. Right? His counter-punching is probably the most dangerous thing in this fight entirely. But I think Gamrat is an extremely smart fighter, very high fight IQ. I think he knows how to pick his shots, pick where he wants to engage with the action. He'll go at it in the center, throw a lot of feints, get some counter shots out of Guram, attack behind those, get a takedown potentially, get that single leg or something like that, and mix up the game on him. So ultimately, I'm going to go with Gamrat, and I'm going to go by a decision win. This is going to be an extremely high-level fight. And then we go to what is now the co-main event. It was Ciryl Gane, but he had to pull out of the fight. So we're left with Caitlyn Kagan versus Jessica Andraj. Jessica Andraj going up to 125, a division she's never been in the UFC yet. And I don't know how she's really gonna fare against bigger fighters because that was her, not kryptonite, but that was a weakness of her going into the 135-pound division. Fighters are able to overpower her, and her power and strength are her reliabilities. She relies on those attributes over those smaller 115ers, and they cannot handle when she gets a hold of them. Even though she was one of the least technical fighters in that entire division, her attributes alone, from her strength to power to cardio, allowed her to defeat even quote-unquote better fighters than she was. But is that going to be the same at 125? Caitlyn Kagan's much bigger than Andraj. She's 8 inches taller. She's going to weigh heavier. Andraj doesn't even weigh 135 pounds. Walking around these days, maybe she adds on some more weight so she can use some of that power advantage. But if it's a contest of technique and skills, I don't see how Andraj wins this fight, to be honest. I think Caitlyn Kagan is going to be able to move around, use her reach advantage, use her footwork advantage, use her athleticism, use her size, and able to thwart a lot of the clinch work that Andraj is going to force on her, right? And Kagan is very good defensively on the ground as well. If it gets to the ground, I don't see Andraj putting a lot of punishment on Kagan. It's really in the clinch with the slams and some of those hooks where Andraj is going to find a little bit of success, but the footwork from Kagan should allow her to do something similar to what Joanna did to Andraj garage, but on a lesser level from a bigger fighter. So I'm going to go with Caitlyn Kagan. I'm going to go by a decision win. And then we go to the main event. One of the most anticipated fights of the year. Personally, like top 5 fights of the year for me, looking back and looking forward. Brian Ortega versus Seung Jung, the Korean Zombie. There's a lot of X factors in this fight. There's a lot of changes that has happened, and most of it is coming from Brian Ortega's side. Ortega has completely changed his training camp, changed his gym, and changed every single coach besides Henry Gracie. He's not training in like a garage and doing whatever he wants anymore. Crazy to think that that's what he was doing up until a title fight, and that proves how talented he is. But I wonder what the professional approach he's taken to the game now, how is that going to change his style? How is that going to change what he's going to throw out there? Because he was an offensive boxer, a lot of power, with some of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the entire UFC. I don't think we're going to see too much of that here unless he actually develops a wrestling game. That is something that he needed his entire career, I believe. I think if he could take down opponents, he would beat almost every single fighter in this entire division, because if he could take you down, you're not going to do well against him on the ground. And his power on the feet is something to be very worried about. I just don't know if that's what he's bringing to the table now, because Seung Jung does have good takedown defense, and he's really good on the ground himself. I don't think Ortega's going to be able to handle him that easily as people might think. Korean Zombie has been rolling and training with some of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists in the entire world for years. And he has actually trained with Henry Gracie himself, who is Ortega's head Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. But I don't think Korean Zombie is going to be able to hang on the ground with Ortega for the most part. It's 5 rounds. Korean Zombie has gone almost 5 rounds with Jose Aldo in the past, and he fared pretty well. He didn't get that tired. Ortega got really tired against Max Holloway, but that was a faster pace than the Jose Aldo versus Korean Zombie fight. Also, Korean Zombie pretty much went 5 rounds with Yair Rodriguez in a very fast-paced fight, and fared very well cardio-wise. So I'm going to have to give the cardio advantage to Korean Zombie. And also, I do believe his striking, as of what we know from Ortega, without putting in any speculations from his training camp now, what we know is Seung Jung is a better striker. Far better boxer, especially defensively. I think offensively, they're relatively equal. They could dish out very similar kind of damage. Korean Zombie will give him an edge just a little bit due to his countering ability. I mean, the guy has counter jabs left and right, which is something a lot of fighters don't do in the UFC. A lot of professional MMA fighters are not able to counter jabs as effectively as Seung Jung can. Slipping his head on the outside, slipping under, and landing a right overhand or an uppercut, getting their head into line of sight. He has one-punch knockout power, which I think is a little bit more than what Ortega has displayed in his career. He also has decent leg kicks. He has a very respectable jab as well, very respectable at gauging his opponent before he attacks. Ortega's a little bit more offensive and a little bit more raw with his boxing, where he won't feel out the opening. He'll actually just try to force it on you. He'll try to force you to open yourself, and that is not good combining with Seung Jung's countering ability, right? That is what always led me to believe that Korean Zombie was going to win this fight. Ortega just forces things too much, and that is never something you want to do against Korean Zombie. Nobody beats Korean Zombie doing that. Even in his weird knockout loss to Yair Rodriguez, a fight that he was winning, again, Yair Rodriguez didn't force an opening on Korean Zombie. Korean Zombie forced an opening on himself. Yair went back and countered him with that weird elbow. Jose Aldo was kind of just sticking in the center of the octagon, wrestled Korean Zombie a lot, used his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense to be able to get back up to his feet whenever this happened, and just kicked at him from a distance. Jabs from a distance, outsped him in almost every exchange. Didn't really force anything out there that we usually do see from Jose Aldo. Every single opponent, from Dustin Poirier to Leonard Garcia to Dennis Bermudez to a little bit Renato Moicano, everyone who tried to force an opening on Seung Jung got finished eventually. And Ortega is probably the least defensive-minded fighter out of all those guys Korean Zombie has fought, besides maybe Leonard Garcia. So ultimately, that goes right into my prediction for this fight. This is without speculations of Ortega's new style or techniques that he has adopted into his style. Just what we know from Brian Ortega, what we know from Korean Zombie. I have to go with Korean Zombie in this one. Maybe even if Ortega develops that wrestling game, I think Korean Zombie might be strong enough defensively to stop the takedowns, given that Ortega never really goes for takedowns in the first place. How high of a level of a wrestler can he actually be from almost no takedowns to getting down someone like Korean Zombie? I don't think he's at that level yet. I think he's probably halfway there, if anything. So I'm going to go with Korean Zombie. I'm going to go by a 4th round TKO. I see Ortega getting peppered throughout the entire fight. Right hand start landing in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Ortega's trying to force things out there, showing his heart, showing his grit, and eventually gets dropped by a big right hand from Seung Jung, finished on the ground due to ground and pound. And yes, I think Ortega will be discombobulated enough where when Korean Zombie chases him to the ground, there's not much of a threat there from Ortega. And man, there's a lot of big favorites, a lot of big underdogs on this card, and a lot of new names, which is a very good combination for people getting into betting, and nobody does it better than MyBookie.ag. Better lines than any other sports book. You could pick whatever fighter you want, you could pick whatever method you want. You could predict which rounds, you could predict a draw, draw, you can predict anything you want with MyBookie.ag. And if just picking a specific fight or a specific method is not your kind of thing, and you're more confident in many picks throughout an entire card, you could put up your parlay. Just put up that lineup of fighters you are confident in, and you can multiply your earnings big time. And man, all of the sports are coming back. NFL, basketball, MLB. MyBookie has everything coming out live. Everything's changing as we speak, so the faster you get to it, the better it is. And all you gotta do is go to mybookie.ag and sign up for the deposit bonus, where MyBookie will double your first deposit all the way up to $1,000. That means you deposit $100, you get another $100 in free money to play with. Just use the promo code WEASEL to activate this offer. That's promo code WEASLE to activate MyBookie's sign up offer this winning season. Sign up with mybookie.ag today, where you bet, you win, and when you win, you get paid. And man, there's a lot of very interesting odds on this card. John Phillips is actually a big underdog against Jung Park. I think it's a lot closer than they're giving it, man. Maxine Grishin is a huge favorite, minus 355 favorite over Antigulov. I do not think that's warranted because Grishin hasn't looked too great in the UFC yet. I think it's a little bit too much of a favorite. Jimmy Cruz over a 3-1 favorite over Modestas, even though one shot from either of them in this fight's done. And Jessica Andraj is a favorite over Caitlyn Kagan, which I don't necessarily agree with. And if this shocks you, Korean Zombie's a favorite, almost a 2-1 favorite over Brian Ortega, if that shocks you in any way. So I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions. If you did, make sure to thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.